students. My name's Cheryl Swinton. I'm Mallee and Yapa girl, but I'm currently on Wiradjuri land here in Dubbo. So Danielle Smith and I have developed a variety of cultural awareness sessions for all students who choose to do their placement with the Northwest Academic Centre in which we're employed. We began with the students attending 2Cuz radio station in Bourke with the Dixon twins, and they were amazing. But this is the start of COVID and one of them has a chronic disease, so they stopped running the workshops. So we had to find other options and people to deliver this service. We tried a few other options, but we now have some great resources and wonderful people to work with, as we want our students to have a better understanding of Aboriginal people and how to work with them in our various communities. We know that every community is different, so we have someone in each town to deliver these sessions, and they do an incredible workshop or tour, and they deliver it in a way that our students get a much better understanding of why some Aboriginal people react in the way they do. They are open to questions and are non-judgmental, good, kind people. They're also passionate about what they do, which makes a huge difference in keeping people engaged and understanding Aboriginal culture and the truth in Australian history. They don't ever lay blame or point the finger at non-Indigenous people. They just want everyone to understand what has happened to our generation and why it can still impact on so many Aboriginal people today, as it really wasn't that long ago. The students who attend Gadooga will now get a delivery from somebody at the school. We'll run them through a cultural awareness session. And Lightning Ridge, they have a cultural awareness session with Tom Barker at the Gundi. Students in Walgett are usually placed in the health sector, so they have one of their Aboriginal staff members. We'll have a chat to them about how best to work with Aboriginal people in that community. Brewarrina students get to attend the Brewarrina Culture Museum with Bradley Hardy, and the Bourke students get the best of both worlds as they attend the Brewarrina Museum with Bradley Hardy and then meet with an Aboriginal gentleman who doesn't call himself an elder, Victor Bartley, in the afternoon at our office for a relaxed chat about his history as a young Aboriginal boy growing up in Bourke, who went on to become a Vietnam veteran, and how his Aboriginality has impacted on his life, but also how well his life has panned out. He's quite inspirational. We were fortunate enough to enlist James Moore to do his smoking ceremony recently and hope to continue with this for bigger groups who come to town. It was simply amazing, and everyone to experience this, they were able to experience this in a way that you normally wouldn't get to, because it's the joys of a smaller community, everybody participates in that. Whereas if you're in a larger community, you don't get to actually come up and experience firsthand. Danielle has also offered to do a demonstration with her sister and to film it on how to make Johnny cakes, which is a bit of a delicacy within small communities and especially Aboriginal communities. So this will be really good because a lot of people probably don't get to see that done every day. So we're going to work on that for our students as well. But it's part of that, so they have an understanding, because our communities are predominantly Aboriginal communities, and it's important that people understand why it might take a little longer to engage with Aboriginal people, but how vitally important their work is in these communities. So thank you.
So hello everyone, my name is Cheryl Pizzuri and I am an industry PhD candidate at the University of Sydney. Thank you for your interest in my research and for being here today. So this research study, which is a scoping review with a consultation exercise with international experts, aims to identify, select and synthesize available research evidence on the use of electronic health data analysis for individual performance data and the subsequent use of this type of performance data to develop personalized CPD programs, activities, and plans for medical practitioners. So why we decided to conduct this research study? Some background. In Australasia, both academia and industry are currently considering the idea of using electronic health data analysis to inform the design of CPD activities and programs for medical practitioners. Despite a strong interest and combined research efforts, there is little knowledge on the role of electronic health data analysis for the development of personalized CPD. Also, it is still unclear what tools have been developed so far and what challenges are delaying the use of data analytics technologies in CPD development. Regarding the research methods, I used the Axie and O'Malley framework for scoping reviews. In addition, I decided to conduct a consultation exercise with international experts in order to validate my findings, identify additional papers to include, and gather insights on themes and current issues that could have been overlooked. Regarding the methods employed for the scoping review, I would just like to add some details about the database search strategy to let you better understand the study selection process. As you can see, the search concepts have been organized according to the PCC framework, which stands for Population, Concept and Context, recommended by the Joanna Briggs Institute. And the search syntax that you can see at the very bottom of the slide has been built around these search concepts and all related terms. And of course, rigorous selection criteria were set and used for screening and full text review. Regarding the consultation exercise, international experts were identified through the scoping review results, meaning that the authors of the included papers and also additional researchers in the field of data analytics and medical education were contacted. 15 experts agreed to participate and were interviewed following a pre-approved semi-structured outline. And all the interviews have been analyzed using the Brown and Clark's contemporary approach to reflexive thematic analysis. Regarding the results, the literature search led to the inclusion of 9 papers in the scoping review. You can see the flow diagram here, and I apologize if it's very small, but I'm happy to share with you the slides after the presentation. In the meantime, I can share with you that after data analysis and charting, some trends and patterns were identified in the literature. And among other findings, it is evident that after an early foundation phase characterized by conceptual models based on a retrospective approach to electronic health data analysis, the literature then focuses on implementation and evaluation on some and new existing tools. And notably, one tool uses a predictive approach to data analytics for learning needs identification. Also, I have noticed that in recent years, published studies explore medical practitioners' attitudes towards and engagement with electronic health data, or shed light on those systemic and cultural factors that influence the use of this type of data for CPD purposes. So an additional shift in the literature. When it comes to the consultation exercise, you can see here the main themes and sub-themes emerged after analysis. And to give you a brief overview of our considerations on the consultation exercise, I can share with you that most of the participants believe that the use of electronic health data analysis for self-reflection and identifications of area of improvement could support medical practitioners in their educational journey and encourage the development of CPD activities, programs, and plans linked to clinical practice. Nonetheless, they acknowledge the existence of several systemic and cultural factors that will need to be taken into consideration for a full implementation of data analytics technologies for CPD purposes. Finally, all participants call for more research, multidisciplinary collaborations, and stakeholders' engagement in order to advance the field. Unfortunately, there's no time to discuss the results in detail, but to conclude, I can say that this study definitely fills a gap in the literature, provides a foundation for further research in the field of electronic health data analysis for CPD purposes. It also offers an overview of both the academic and industry context within which the field is developing, and finally, it illustrates where the field is moving towards. And that's all from me today. Thank you again for watching, and please feel free to ask me more questions about the research using the Padlet, because I'm more than happy to answer all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm hoping I'm sharing the right screen. So Laura wasn't able to be with us today, so I'll be presenting on her behalf. So this presentation just focuses on 2 online ethics resources for health profession students. And the overall project was funded by 2 strategic education grants, and it was led by Dr. Belinda Kenny. The team consisted of an interprofessional team of academics listed here from Sydney Uni, who were involved at all various stages of the project. And we're also very grateful to Sasha Cohen, Tina Barkley and her team for all of their help over the years. So just as a way of background, we like to think that sound ethical reasoning skills, effective communication, and the perception of ethics as integral to everyday practice are required for health professionals to deliver quality care. And so as academics involved in professional preparation programs, we like to identify ethical competence as a core graduate attribute. However, many educators do struggle with teaching and evaluating ethics curricula and bridging that gap between ethical theory and professional practice. So this project adopted a design-based research process to address this gap, creating online interprofessional educational resources to facilitate health science students to apply ethical reasoning in professional practice scenarios. So we use current best practice in terms of using experiential learning approaches and reflective practice-based curricula. The complexity in terms of changes to meet students' knowledge and experience was also considered with the 2 resources that were developed aimed at students with lower and higher experience levels. We also used a structured decision-making tool in order to build students' ethical reasoning skills. So this is just a sample of the Ethics in Professional Practice resource. It consisted of 5 different scaffolded video cases that capture ethical issues in various settings, such as the adult hospital, pediatric community health environment. And each main video scenario was then followed by videos showing the perspectives from all of the characters involved in the scenario. We also included pre and post self-rating scales so that students could measure changes in attitudes and perceptions towards ethics before and after the completion of the resource. And there were also guided activities such as an ethics decision-making template to facilitate students' ethical reasoning skills, and a reflective action plan at the end of it all for students to develop learning goals for their ethical practice. The Leadership in Ethical Practice resource aimed to highlight why ethical leadership was important in health science students. So there are 2 case scenarios in this resource, one in the healthcare setting and the other in the business setting. So the video scenarios include a student as a central character, and as this video scenario unfolds, the Leadership in Ethical Practice resource uses a narrative approach to ethical decision-making, and the activities guide students through active listening, reflexive thinking, reflection, and goal setting. At the end of the resource, we have included interviews with industry leaders in health and business in order to guide students and to also highlight some specific requirements in student skills, such as moral courage, for example, so that individuals can understand how that is required and how to act with it when ethical values are being compromised, and then to also be able to speak out against unethical behaviours. So we know that there's a complex relationship between learning, applying and practicing ethical behaviours, and in our initial findings, we found that ethic goal setting could be one way to bridge that gap between ethics theory and practice. So I just wanted to share some of our findings and reflections around the goal setting data for both of these resources. In the EPP resource, students were asked to write a goal for their ethical practice that they aim to achieve during their next clinical placement. So in this section of the study, we had a total of 53 students from diagnostic radiography, rehabilitation counselling and speech pathology. And we conducted a thematic analysis, found 3 main themes that related to being ethically sensitive, integrating ethics with practice, and also demonstrating courage. The focus of the LEP resource was on the importance of incorporating ethical leadership into practice. And in this particular evaluation, we had 82 students from the diagnostic radiography program participate, and a deductive content analysis was undertaken. And we identified 4 main themes with the categories shown on this slide. So for example, the goals for the first theme was initiative, competence and courage in ethical reasoning, which reflected students' intention to apply ethical issues, to speak up against unethical behaviour, and the significance of developing ethical reasoning skills to work through ethical dilemmas effectively whilst in their placement and in the future practice. So overall, we aim to move away from only talking about ethics when with students once a breach in a code of conduct has been identified. Academic and clinical educators may face challenges to equip graduates with the skills needed to identify and manage ethical dilemmas in the workplace, but we're also uniquely placed to prepare graduates for ethical leadership and proactive ethical practice. So these resources aim to provide a starting point for sound ethical reasoning skills and to provide students with the proactive capacity for future leadership roles in ethical practice. Thank you very much.
Excellent, thank you. So thanks very much for having me, and thanks for the great presentation so far. I will get started. So as Carol said, I'm talking about our Pathway to Medical Practice course in our medical program, which is the joint medical program at the University of Newcastle and the University of New England in Armidale. This course, and in particular the health professions education pathway, which I'll be talking mostly about today, is the product of a lot of work by a whole team of people who I've listed here, not the least of which is our previous Professor of Medical Education, Brian Jolly. So Pathways to Medical Practice is run over 2 years with a 6-week coursework component in year 4, and we do a 5-week project block in year 5. So this is we have a 5-year undergraduate program. So there are 5 pathways that that students choose from. They do have an element of choice, but of course they don't always get their first preferences just given. We have to align the pathways with other logistical issues like their clinical school allocations. So there's a series of overarching, fairly high-level course objectives for the Pathways course overall, and these focus largely on lifelong learning, the integration of knowledge from other parts of the program. There's an emphasis on individual learning approaches and student autonomy. The pathways are intended to be heterogeneous, innovative and exploratory. The idea is to provide a deep dive into an area of interest and to encourage reflective practice. So a lot of the assessment that's associated with these pathways is more about the reflective practice. Students do largely portfolio-based assessment in the year 4 component, and then in year 5 they do after their project they do a presentation, and most of the assessment criteria around that presentation is focused on the reflection component of what they've learnt. So the health professions education pathway is designed to develop students' medical education knowledge, skills and attributes with a focus on the theoretical basis of learning and in the health profession, and the interface between curriculum, learning, teaching, assessment and professional practice. We aim to build student skills as learners, so making them more effective consumers of medical education and improving their assessment literacy. And that has been quite well received. You can see students in that year 4 component of the course starting to really develop a better understanding of why the curriculum that they've been part of for the last 4 years has been designed in the way it has, and to really start to appreciate some of the considerations behind that. Other objectives, we aim to build on their skills as effective teachers and also to help to aid their understanding of how other health professions undertake their education, and also to provide opportunities to engage in research in clinical education and to learn from experts. So the Hpe Pathway is delivered as 5 modules, each of which is led by a different one of our team. team members. We use a range of interactive and engaging sessions. So we run seminars, debates, panel discussions. We've actually got coming up this year, You Can't Ask That with Lambert Schuworth, which I'm very much looking forward to. We have lots of student-led sessions. Students run small micro-teaching type sessions with their peers. We have students actually design and run their own OSCE. And things like doing standard setting processes and things like that. So getting very hands-on. We've been limited in the last couple of years to primarily Zoom-based, online-based teaching, but this year we have the luxury of returning to some face-to-face. So the students from all of the different clinical schools will actually be together in the first week of our pathway this year. We'll be able to do lots of those fun things in person, and then they'll go back to their own clinical schools for a bit more of a hybrid model for the rest of the block. So the projects in Year 5, student pre-COVID, we had great grand plans to do lots of interesting overseas placements in a range of health professional education institutions, continuing medical education colleges, places like the AMC. Unfortunately, when COVID happened, we were limited to running most of our projects in a fairly restricted local area, but actually it ended up being a huge benefit for us. We had a great boost to our faculty resources as a result of the projects that students have done. So we've had students do some really great things, like on reflection of on their own learning and their own program, having identified what they have seen as a gap in sort of a topic that we haven't covered well. They've designed a session to fill that gap, or developed an online module. They've piloted those sessions and got some feedback from peers. We've had students developing resources to help particularly younger, more junior students preparing for OSCEs and those new styles of assessment as they evolve through the program. We've had students doing some really interesting comparisons between the nature of the teaching and learning in our different clinical schools, so the sort of rural versus urban clinical schools, lots of near-peer teaching, and just overall lots of really great resources, which then we've been able to continue to embed. We've actually got some of our students who graduated last year as part of helping us do an Hpe presentation, coming up in another month or so, reflecting on the projects that they did as part of their Hpe Pathway. So it's led to some sort of publication type opportunities for students as well, which has been really great. And that is where I will stop.